Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Millennium TV News. This is Rofik Pramanik with top stories. President-elect shakes hands with Kanye West at Trump Tower. Cyber attack review to prevent future interference, said Obama. Bill Gates meets with Donald Trump. United Nations chief renews calls to stop the carnage in Syria. Osprey aircraft grounded after Japan crash. Those are the headlines. Now the detail. President-elect Donald Trump says he discussed life with rapper Kanye West during a meeting at Trump Tower. Rapper Kanye West met with President-elect Donald Trump at Trump Tower in New York on Tuesday. The pair came out of an elevator for a photo op where reporters asked Trump what they had discussed behind closed doors. Trump replied, "Life. We have been friends for a long time," said Trump. West ignored reporters' questions on what the pair had discussed. "I just want to take a picture right now," said West. The 39-year-old rapper made headlines in November when he was booed at his San Jose, California concert for declaring his support for Trump. U.S. President Barack Obama says he called for a review of cyber attacks and foreign intervention in the 2016 election so that such attacks can be prevented in the future. U.S. President Barack Obama sits down with Trevor Noah from Comedy Central's The Daily Show. But the discussion is not intended to induce the usual laughs. Last week, a U.S. official said the CIA had concluded Russia had intervened in the 2016 presidential election. Obama is now calling for a comprehensive review. "The reason that I have called for a review is really just gather all the threads of the investigations, the intelligence work that has been done over many months, and put it in a single document that can be shared with members of Congress, relevant intelligence agencies, and can be shared with the transition teams so that they understand what exactly happened." The review is to be delivered before Obama leaves office on January 20. Microsoft co-founder and philanthropist Bill Gates meets with Donald Trump in New York and says he spoke with the president-elect about innovations. Microsoft Corporation co-founder and philanthropist Bill Gates said he and U.S. President-elect Donald Trump had a good conversation about the power of innovation on a variety of issues, including health and education. "We had a good conversation about innovation, how it can help in health, education, impact of foreign aid and energy," Gates, who runs one of the largest private charities in the world, told reporters as he left Trump Tower in New York City after their talk. United Nations Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon renews his calls for all fighters and their allies to stop the carnage in Syria, and in particular eastern Aleppo. United Nations Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon on Tuesday called on all fighters and their allies battling in Syria to stop the carnage and return to the negotiating table. The country is enduring a further escalation in violence amid what was already one of the most brutal conflicts in a generation. The outgoing Secretary-General said his call for peace comes as the Syrian army continues to rupture Aleppo districts, sparking a mass flight of civilians and insurgents in bitter weather. Behind those fleeing was a wasteland of flattened buildings, concrete rubble and bullet-pocked walls, where tens of thousands had lived until recent days under intense bombardment, even after medical and rescue services had collapsed. The United Nations has described the crisis in Aleppo as a complete meltdown of humanity. The US military has grounded all its tilt-rotor Osprey aircraft in Japan after one of the planes crashed into the sea. What remains of a US-operated Osprey aircraft bobs in the sea where it crashed on Tuesday. The 5 crew on board escaped with their lives but suffered some injuries. It is the first crash in Japan involving the tilt-rotor Osprey used by US forces in Okinawa. On Wednesday, the US military said its other Osprey aircraft in Japan were grounded and an investigation was underway. The aircraft has become a lightning rod for opposition to the US military presence in Okinawa. Local groups who want American bases to close say the plane is prone to accident and risk to residents. Viewers, we'll take a short break. Stay with us. We are back in a moment with the headlines here. Syrian army, Iraqi militia reportedly killing Aleppo civilians, said United Nations. Brazil spending cap sparks angry protests. Trial of all criminals must continue, said Prime Minister. People's democratic rights still remain unfulfilled, BNP. President, Prime Minister pay tribute to martyred intellectuals. The United Nations said on Tuesday it had reports that Syrian government troops had alleged Iraqi militias had killed civilians in eastern Aleppo. The United Nations said on Tuesday it had reports that Syrian government troops and allied Iraqi militias had killed civilians in eastern Aleppo, including 82 people in 4 different neighborhoods in the last few days. The Syrian army and its allies have taken full control over all the Aleppo districts abandoned by rebels during their retreat in the city, a Syrian military source said on Tuesday. Rupert Colville, spokesman for the United Nations Human Rights Office, said he feared retribution against thousands of civilians believed to be holed up in a hellish corner of less than a square kilometer of opposition-held areas. Protesters take to the streets as senators approve a 20-year limit on public spending by constitutional amendment, unprecedented in Brazil. Heated scenes in Brazil's largest city of Sao Paulo on Tuesday, as protesters took to the streets in protest after senators passed a 20-year public spending ceiling as part of an austerity drive by the government of President Michel Temer as he struggles to restore fiscal discipline amid an economic recession and political crisis. The move to limit spending by constitutional amendment was unprecedented in Brazil and is expected to be followed by an equally popular reform of Brazil's generous pension system. Some demonstrators broke into violence, smashing windows and firing flares at the Sao Paulo Industry Federation building during a protest against the constitutional amendment known as PEC 55. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on Wednesday said the trial of war criminals involved in genocide, killing of intellectuals and opposition, the independence of the country must continue. No one will be able to save them. Whatever the tactics and conspiracy they devise, the trial will go on, she said. The Prime Minister said that while addressing a discussion at Krishibid Institution, Bangladesh. Awami League organized the discussion on the occasion of the Martyred Intellectuals Day. She said putting under trial the war criminals who had guided the Pakistani occupational forces to the grassroots level of the country and kidnapped the intellectual just on the eve of the victory is the only path to justice. BNP Secretary General Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir on Wednesday regretted that people's democratic rights could not be achieved even after the country's 46 years of independence. It's regrettable that though we had waged the Liberation War in 1971 for ensuring people's democratic and basic rights and for their freedom, we could not attain those even after 46 years of independence, he said. The BNP leader further said, democracy is now besieged while people are deprived of their basic rights. Even we have lost our minimum democratic rights to franchise. Fakhrul came up with the remarks while talking to reporters after placing wreaths at the Martyr Intellectual Memorial at Mirpur, marking the Martyr Intellectuals Day. President Abdul Hamid and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina paid tributes to the martyred intellectual by placing wreaths at the martyred intellectual graveyard in Mirpur area of Dhaka early on Wednesday. The President and Prime Minister placed the wreaths at about 7 a.m. to show homage to the great heroes. After placing the wreaths, President Abdul Hamid and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina stood in solemn silence for some time as a mark of profound respect to the memories of the illustrious sons of the soil. A smartly turned out contingent of Bangladesh Armed Forces gave a state salute, while the Beagle played the last post at that time. Members of the cabinet, the mayors of Dhaka North and South City corporations, the chiefs of the three services, as well as high civil and military officials were present. Viewers, will take a short break. Stay with us. We are back in a moment. Now the news on environment, science and technology. Footprints made by early humans millions of years ago have been uncovered in Tanzania, close to where similar tracks were found in the 1970s. The impression were made when some of our distant relatives walked together across white volcanic ash. Their makers, most likely Australopithecus afarensis, appear to have had a wide range of body sizes. Scientists say this gives clues to how this ancient species of human lived. The fossils of Lucky, a young adult female who lived in Ethiopia 3.2 million years ago, is perhaps the most famous individual. The newly discovered footprints may have been made by a male walking with smaller females. This novel evidence, taken as a whole with the previous findings, portrays several early hominins moving as a group through the landscape following a volcanic eruption and subsequent rainfall. But there is more, said lead researcher Professor Giorgio Manji, director of the archaeological project in Tanzania. We tend not to think of feathers when we think of dinosaurs, but we should. Lots of them had feathers. It's just that we have not found many of their fossils. Well, now scientists have discovered a new specimen that they are very excited about. Professor Mike Benton from the School of Earth Science at the University of Bristol collaborated with colleagues in China to work on the fossil. A unique mass spectrometry suite at an English university is at the center of a bid by scientists to find evidence of life on Mars. It's a question that fascinates us: is there life on Mars? This Newcastle University scientists hope to provide an answer using their engineering and analysis laboratory, arguably the most advanced of its type in Europe. Professor Peter Kamson, Mechanical and System Engineering of Newcastle University, saying, "The instrument behind me is really an extremely good microscope operating with helium ions instead of light, which enables you to focus those helium ions so well that you can get basically manometer resolution. So we are almost on the point of seeing individual atoms that way, but this instrument over here gives a lot more. This is a secondary ion mass spectrometer." Viewers, now the news on business. Venezuela, mired in an economic crisis and facing the world's highest inflation, will pull its largest bill worth $2 cents on the black market from circulation this week. He has the beard, the hat and the tummy. One thing Santa can't manage many of these years is presents, though there is the odd bag of food to give out. Basic goods are scarce in Venezuela, but these its most common bank notes are to disappear altogether. Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro saying will talk out of circulation the 100 Bolivar bills over the next 72 hours and give a fair deadline for those who own the bills to declare them. The surprise move will, he says, deal a blow to so-called mafias. The International Monetary Fund chief plays to fight allegation by allegation. Charges of negligence when she went on trial in Paris over her role in a huge payout by the French state to businessman Bernard Tapie in 2008. She is standing trial over her role in a €400 million state payment to French businessman Bernard Tapie. IMF chief Christian Lagarde was France's finance minister at that time under President Nicolas Sarkozy. She approved an out-of-court settlement to end a dispute between the state and the Tapie, but denies negligence leading to misuse of public funds. The Dow rally continued, but the S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composite fell on Monday after 6 seasons of gains wiped by tech sector stocks, while a rally in energy shares petered out as crude oil gains weathered. The Dow has closed at record highs now 15 times since the election, including Monday. The major US indices finishing out the first day of the week mixed overall. The focus is squarely on the Fed meeting that starts Tuesday and wraps up with a rate decision on Wednesday. Meridian Equity Partners Jonathan Carpier is a little concerned. Viewers, now the news on entertainment. Star Wars spin-off Rogue One premieres at London's Tate Modern. The Star Wars universe landed in London on Tuesday with stormtroopers standing guard at the Riverside Tate Modern Art Gallery for the launch of the sci-fi franchise new standalone film Rogue One, instead of walking the red carpet in the central Leicester Square, where movie premieres are usually held in the British capital. Actors Felicity Jones, Mads Mikkelsen and Forrest Whitaker promoted their film at the gallery. Home to contemporary artworks, logos from the movie were projected on the gallery's bare walls around the main hall, dotted with the stormtroopers. Bill Cosby returns to a Pennsylvania courtroom where his lawyers are expected to renew their battle with the prosecutors over whether more than a dozen female accusers can testify at his criminal sexual trial next year. Bill Cosby returned to a Pennsylvania courtroom on Tuesday where his lawyers are expected to renew their battle with the prosecutors over whether more than a dozen female accusers can testify at his criminal sexual trial next year. The outcome of the argument is crucial for Cosby, 79. If prosecutors are successful, the entertainer would face a parade of witnesses portraying him as a serial predator rather than a single woman testifying about decade-old encounter fueled by drugs and alcohol. The social starlights, the Empire State Building's tower lights blue to celebrate UNICEF's anniversary. David Beckham helped UNICEF celebrate its 70th anniversary by lighting New York's Empire State Building's tower lights blue on Monday. UNICEF began after World War II as a way to help children get back to a normal life. Beckham has been an UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador for 11 years and have worked with the organization for 15. In February 2015, the father of four founded the David Beckham UNICEF Fund in order to raise money and awareness for protecting children from violence. Now the news on sports. Keaton Jennings was called up the England Test squad as a replacement for Hasib Hamid. England openers Keaton Jennings and Hasib Hamid have been included in the Lions squad to tour Sri Lanka in February and March. Jennings, who scored 100 on debut in the fourth test against India, will captain the side in the 4-day and 1-day matches against Sri Lanka. Hamid played 3 tests in India before suffering a hand injury and is in the 4-day squad. Fellow batsman Ben Duckett is the Lions 1-day squad. Duckett played 4 tests on England's winter tour before being dropped, but did make 2 half-centuries in 3 one-day international against Bangladesh. Bangladeshi cricketers started a 10-day conditioning camp in Sydney, Australia on Sunday, building up to their tour of New Zealand for a full-fledged series comprising 3 ODIs, 3 T20s and 2 test matches starting on Boxing Day. December 26, traditionally the highlight of the cricketing season in the part of the world. Bangladesh cricketers warmed up starting the training session with football at Blacktown International Sports Park on Sunday. The most important news for Tigers fans from the first training session would be that their young pace sensation Mustafiz Rahman, who missed the entire home session, just concluded with a shoulder injury that required surgery eventually, bowled all in the nets on the first day. Viewers, let's have a look Millennium TV News recap. President-elect shakes hands with Kanye West at Trump Tower. Cyber attack reviewed to prevent future interference, said Obama. Bill Gates meets with Donald Trump. United Nations chief renews calls to stop the carnage in Syria. Osprey aircraft grounded after Japan crash. Viewers, to get any kinds of news, log in our social media, facebook.com/MillenniumTVUSA and youtube.com/MillenniumTVUSA. You are up to date with our top stories so far here on Millennium TV, and don't forget to log in our website www.millenniumtv.net. Thank you and stay with Millennium TV. Allah Hafiz.